join the military, travel the world, meet lots of interesting people, and then kill them. That was the joke my best friend Simon used to talk me into joining the army. He'd been there for 2 years and said it was a wonderful life. So I joined the same unit he was in and then volunteered for the Special Forces unit he joined. The training was grueling, but we helped each other through everything. Our group was based in a big city and life was pretty stable. It was here that I met my love and got married a month later. She was a real sweetheart named Pam. By the time I had served 10 years, I had been happily married for 8 years, and Pam and I were raising 2 daughters whom I adored, 7-year-old Kate and 5-year-old Melissa. Unlike some Army units, mine didn't change deployments. We had to go out for 2 days to 2 weeks, but not more often. I was home at normal times, about 365 days a year, so life was as normal as it could be. I had a wife I loved and a family I would gladly die for. Then, of course, Osama bin Dickhead did his thing, and by some convoluted logic, Simon and I were invited on vacation to Iraq that same year. It was a hard parting with family, but it was what Pam and I had signed up for. We did our jobs throughout the build-up and invasion and were quietly excited to get home soon. It was cool when our group got a lecture from the regimental political officer. We were to stay and fight to keep the peace. Simon, always being Larry Keane, couldn't help but give the politician a hard time. "Sir, fighting for peace, isn't that like having sex to save your virginity?" It was amazing to see a room full of stout soldiers laughing until they were giddy, while the lecturer walked away annoyed. Well, as history shows, peace was more violent than invasion. At least the enemy wore uniforms during the invasion. We lost more guys during that time than ever before. Our unit was busier than most and was stationed behind enemy lines for up to 4 weeks and then back to base for 2 weeks. Well, I say behind enemy lines, although no one could ever mark that on a map. No one could tell us when we were coming home. Every other night on base, I used Skype to talk to Pam, Kate, and Mel. That way, at least they won't forget what I look like when I get back. 3 weeks after we started our last mission, we were in the shit. We were supposed to attack a base that was supposed to have about 100 bad guys on it, but we were met by about 1,000 people. There were only 12 of us, so we hurriedly retreated. It took 2 days before the Blackhawks dared to come and get us. Only 4 of us could still walk, and 3 of us died. Worst of all, Simon, my life support, had torn tendons in the back of his knee. Nothing fatal, but his military career was over. He was taken back to the hospital in our hometown with the other wounded, while the rest of us were kept in the countryside so that we could be psychologically healthy enough to rejoin humanity. It was obvious to everyone that we no longer had enough guys to keep going. Cold-blooded military planners have known since Roman times that once troops lose more than 10% of their personnel, morale drops. That's probably why whenever a Roman legion retreated from a battle, its own officers killed 1 in 10 men in a process called extermination. What assholes! It worked, though. Roman legions never ran away from most battles. 7 days after returning from a mission from hell and 9 months after deployment, I was sitting in the mess tent using my laptop to send an email to one of the new widows of one of my guys. I emailed all 3 of them as the Army confirmed that they had been officially notified of their husbands' deaths. The Army used a whole bureaucracy to do this, but we were a close-knit unit, and I knew they would appreciate the individualized approach. I knew them all. Unlike me, they all lived on base. That third conversation was very difficult for me. As for the first 2, I had been truthful when I said their husbands died quickly and safely. This time I would have to lie. As the senior officer in my platoon, I made sure that all contact with these women who had lost loved ones went through me. If they were going to hear a lie, they were going to hear a consistent lie from me. Suddenly, a small Skype message appeared on my laptop screen. "Kate Young is online." Desperate to distract myself from my emotionally draining task, I dialed the number. Within seconds, my oldest daughter's beautiful face graced my screen. I saw that she was sitting on the couch in our living room with her laptop that she had been given last Christmas. "Daddy!" she squealed. That brought her sister to the screen, and soon I was talking to my 2 reasons I need to live, and they were talking to me as fast as they could. For the next half hour, we chatted merrily about school, their trip to the zoo that day, and anything else that came to mind. I felt myself relaxing. The urge to strike out and kill something, anyone, was slowly receding. I glanced at the clock and calculated it was time for them to go to bed and tried to end our conversation. "Where's your mom?" I asked Mel. Kathy was hiding behind a frame somewhere. "Oh, she's in the kitchen with Uncle Mick, Mom's new friend. He went to the zoo with us today," Mel said. My blood ran cold. Neither Pam nor I had a brother Mick. I fought a sudden feeling of devastation. I'd seen it too many times, and now I tried to relax. "How long has Uncle Mick been in the house?" I asked with all the carelessness I could muster. Hell, I kill people for a living. I'm not a bloody actor. "Right after Easter, Dad?" Hell, that was 2 months ago. The fact that Pam hadn't mentioned any new friends told me all I needed to know. "Does Mom see Uncle Mick a lot? How often is he around?" "Oh, he's almost always around." Suddenly I heard Kate whispering off-screen. "Mel, you know Mom doesn't want us to talk about Uncle Mick." Suspicion turned into certainty. Rage began to build. Control tried with great difficulty to suppress the feeling. "Kate, come to the screen, please," I barked. Kate looked confused. "Kate, is Uncle Mick staying at the sleepover?" "Yes, Daddy." Shit. With even more difficulty, I held back the wild hatred that could have consumed my being. "So you like Uncle Mick?" Once again, both girls spoke at the same time. It was impossible to listen to both at the same time. I caught the word slippery. He hit me. Doesn't like us. "Okay, hush, girls. Now, Kate, you go first." "No, Daddy, we don't like him, and he doesn't love us. He treats us badly when Mommy isn't around. I think he hurts Mommy. Sometimes I can hear screaming from her bedroom when he sleeps at sleepovers." Damn, it hurts so much to hear that from my own child. The Army taught me how to plan quickly in a crisis situation. It was a skill I'd honed in many deadly situations. "That jacket I see hanging by the front door, does it belong to Mick?" "Yes, Daddy." "Go get it, please, Kate, and see if there's a wallet in one of the pockets." She did as I asked, and in 5 minutes I had Uncle Mick's full name, address, and license number. There was also a security card from his employer. After Kate helped with that, she went to the garage and got his car's details, make, model, and license plate number. "Okay, girls, I'm going to call someone. It's only for a few minutes. Leave your screen on and wait for me to come back, okay?" My call took over 10 minutes. Thank goodness Simon's wife Julia was home and didn't go to the hospital. Then I went back to my screen and beckoned the girls over. "Okay, my beautiful princesses. Would you mind going to Aunt Julia's house for a few days?" It was always a popular question. Julia and Simon had 3 children in the same age group as my date and were good friends with them. "Dad, we haven't seen them in ages," Mel called out. So Pam was hiding from our friends? "Well, go to your rooms and gather some clothes and toys, enough for a few days, and Aunt Julia will pick you up soon. And you, Kate, go to the kitchen and put the laptop screen towards Mom, please. I want to talk to her, and then you go pack your things." "Okay, Dad." I was taken on a tour of the house while the laptop was carried into the kitchen. When the kitchen door opened, I saw Pam and a young man sitting at the table with a bottle of wine between them. They paid no attention to Kate as she set the computer on the edge of the table. In fact, they were in their own little world until Kate said, "Mom, Dad wants to talk to you." They both turned around as if they'd been hit and stared at the screen. Pam's face looked scared, and the man looked like he wanted to hide under the table. "Hey, Pam, how's it going? This must be your new friend, Mick." Their lips moved, but no sounds came out, so I continued. "Come on, Pam, you must have known you'd get caught one day. You must have prepared a little speech for me?" It was obvious she didn't. She tried to bluff without realizing she was the worst liar in the world. I mean, it couldn't have been more obvious if she had a flashing light on her head that lit up every time she tried to bluff me. "He's just a friend of Davy's." "Bullshit, Pam. The girls already told me that asshole has been sleeping with you for the past few weeks." Eventually, Pam decided to open up. Her heroic boyfriend tried to get up and leave, but she grabbed his arm and dragged him back to the table. I waited while various possible responses flashed across her face. It looked like I was watching a movie. "I'm sorry, Dave, but I got so lonely while you were gone. I met Mick and we fell in love." She stopped talking. I wanted to be mad at them, but I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere. I squeezed out a calm tone, continuing the conversation. "Bullshit, Pam. This is the first time I've been away for more than 2 weeks in the 9 years we've been married. Before we were married, I warned you what our life could be like, and you accepted it." She didn't understand what I was even talking about. I continued. "For the record, my dear, the proper sequence should have been to wait until I got home. Wait until I was in a country where distraction could instantly lead to death. Then, when I was home, to tell me you wanted to leave me and give me a chance to change my mind. Then, after we would have broken up, you could have gone and fucked the piece of shit here." Looking down at the table, Pam muttered, "Sorry, Dave, that's already happened." "So what now, Pam? You're just going to leave me and sail off into the sunset with that asshole?" She didn't even have the courage to look up. She just nodded. "And in this little fantasy world of yours, you'd just take my kids away from me, wouldn't you?" Something in my tone made her wince. It was obvious that the possibility that it hadn't happened had never crossed her mind. "Look, Pam, you know I'm into psychology. Can you remember all the discussions we've had about what influences children? Nature or nurture? Heredity or environment? What happens if the kids go with you? They have your cheating whore genes and will be raised in an environment of cheaters and whores. Trust me, bitch, that's not going to happen." Pam leaned back in her chair as if she'd been punched. She had just heard the first, second, and third offensive words out of my mouth, and they were in the same sentence. Finally, the jerk stood up for her. "Wait a minute. Shut up, asshole. Another thing the Army teaches you is to instantly get the men on the other side of the plaza to obey." He shut up. At that moment, the screen got distracted, and Pam said she was going to open the door. I told her to wait. "It's Julia here to pick up the kids. She's going to take them to her house tonight and take them to school tomorrow. They should have packed something by now, make sure they have everything they need, and then come back so we can talk in peace." Pam stood up, and Uncle Mick wanted to join her. "Sit down, asshole!" He bruised his ass again, quickly sitting down in the chair. I just stared at him for the 8 or so minutes it took Pam to get back up. The stupid asshole even tried to strike up a conversation about how life was in Iraq. One of the stewards came over and replaced my glass. I asked him to make sure I had some privacy. I didn't need any witnesses to the next episode. Finally, Pam rejoined. She started to say, "Look, Dave, I didn't mean for things to go this way." I stopped her. "I just have 2 questions for you, Mickey boy. 1, did you know she was married?" "Sorry, man, I just had a crush on her." "Then I'll take that as a yes." "Second question, do you know what I do for a living?" "Pam says you're in the Iraqi Air Force." Pam interrupted, "No, he's in the Army." "I thought you said he was in the air flying." "Ah, I see what the confusion is here. I'm in the Army, but in a regiment called Special Air Service." I could see that didn't impress him, so I continued. "You probably know us by the acronym SAS." The momentary look of horror reflected on his face told me he finally understood. Hell, every guy in the world knew what SAS stood for. Everyone knew that the books were written that all the special forces of the world were trained by. Everyone knew that if you were killed by the SAS, you wouldn't even know it until Lucifer showed you a replay of the action, and the guy now knew with crystal clarity that he was in serious trouble. The microphone picked up no noise, but his lips clearly formed the words, "Oh shit." "And so, Mr. Michael Brown of 12 Pender Court, Borderdale, the answer to what I do for a living is that I kill people." I leaned in until my face took over the screen. His face was pitiful, pale. "So, asshole, for the crime of allowing yourself to screw my wife, for destroying my marriage, for jeopardizing my daughter's happy future, I sentence you to death." What? "You heard me, damn it! I'm going to kill you!" He just sat there, opening and closing his mouth like a goldfish jumping out of a bowl. Now Pam intervened. "Come on, Dave, cut the crap, macho. I know you're in the military and all, but how many people have you actually killed?" Her light tone surprised me. I turned away from the image of Mick on the screen and looked at her. What also surprised me was the defiant look on her face. I suddenly realized that she had no idea what I did all day. Like most special forces, I didn't advertise what I was doing. No one outside of our close circle of friends knew I was even in the SAS. I definitely didn't tell her what I was doing in Iraq, mostly because I didn't want her to worry. So I answered her without raising my voice. "Well, honey, I've been on base for the last week, so I haven't killed anyone. But the week before that, I killed 10 or 12 bad guys, and it was a bit of a quiet week. Sorry, I didn't really count. It didn't seem important at the time. I shot most of them, but one of them jumped me when I was changing a clip and I stabbed him. I stuck my knife into his stomach, angled upward through his diaphragm until I pierced his heart. Of course, Pam, your mom should have told you that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Through the magic of Skype, we gazed at each other from different points in the world. The one she had just seen was a stranger who, she now knew with deadly certainty, was very dangerous and very, very angry. I saw a man who was suddenly deathly frightened. "Honey, you should know that I didn't hate any of those guys. They were just doing their jobs. I felt absolutely nothing for the guy I stabbed, even as I watched him go out. Now imagine what I'd do to those people I hate." I heard a gurgling noise from Mick shit, so I turned my attention back to him. "Are you still here, asshole? The farther you get away from my house, the longer you live. My knife has an appointment with your throat, and that is a promise you must remember." With a loud groan, he jumped out of his chair and flew out of the screen. I heard the door slam. She was now posing as a goldfish. I let her gather her thoughts, which, judging by the look on her face, were bad. Finally, she whispered, "Are you going to kill me too?" That stopped me. I hadn't made up my mind about her sentence yet. "Pam, I'm sorry, I haven't decided yet. What I do know is this. After you brought that creep into my house and slept with him that even the girls could hear, you're not a fit mother for my children. Oh yeah, Kate told me all about how you scream when he's with you at night. She thinks he's hurting you." I didn't think Pam's facial expression could get any more frightened, but she surprised me. "One thing is for sure, my girls will grow up knowing exactly what I think of cheaters." Another pause allowed my thoughts to move from my emotional forebrain to my rational center. They were both balanced. "Did you know there's a lot of research to suggest that the death of a parent may be less dangerous to children than a messy divorce?" Unsurprisingly, Pam didn't respond to that. She was smart enough to know that there were two options for her in that simple statement, and neither of them suited her. "No, Pam. I think it would be difficult to kill you. I loved you. And until today, I had no reason to think you were a bad mother." Before she got too excited about that, I continued. "So here's the thing, Pam. If ever I find Mickey's boy and you're with him, I'm going to kill you too. If you go to the police, I'll kill you. If you don't have divorce papers ready for me to sign when I get home, I'll kill you. Do your homework, Pam. Remember how many times murderers have been convicted when no one was found. I can assure you that your body will definitely not be there." I let that sink into her head. She was close to collapsing. "Are you really going to kill Mick? Pam, this country has changed me. I've seen so many friends die and I've killed so many people that I only have a shred of humanity left. Killing Mick will not cause me any doubt. Oh, Pam, if you had done it in a more dignified way, I would have understood you." For the first time, Pam's tears came. I wanted to get this over with. "You'd better remember this, Pam. The divorce settlement will give me the house and full custody of the children. Your visitation will be entirely at my discretion, and I think it will be in the best interest of the children. When I return, you will need to get a place to live. I will pay your living expenses for a reasonable amount of time until you get back on your feet. I'll send you the details of an army lawyer. Civilian judges seem to listen to them very well. When I get back, I'll get a job as an instructor on the base so I can be home every night with the girls. We'll get along just fine without you. One thing is for sure, I'm not coming back here again. Before I got here, I was worried I wouldn't be able to take the shots. That wasn't a problem. Now I'm worried about how much soul I'll have left if I have to kill a lot more of other people's children. That's going to eat me up. Good night, Pam. Don't bother me by email or phone until I get back. I won't be set up for a fall when I get home. Just do everything I said and you won't have to wait long to enjoy a happy life. Not the one you could have had, but you made your choice. Now it's time to pay the piper." At that, I closed the connection. I returned home 3 weeks later and was joyfully reunited with Kate and Mel. I tried to explain that their mom would no longer be living with us. They didn't understand, but the constant distraction from Julia, Simon, and their children helped. Every time they met him, they would ask Simon why he walked so funny. Each time he told them a different story, more fantastic than the previous one. When I got off the plane, I was met by the police. El Shithado must have been desperate. They admitted that they had spoken to my wife, and she did not confirm his story. I didn't use any clever evasion techniques, but I didn't admit to anything either. There was nothing they could do except warn me that they would be watching me. The divorce went through with little change on my part. I decided to leave it up to my girls to consider how often they would see their mother. I was surprised at how their childish minds placed so much blame on her for causing us so much pain. They almost never wanted to see her. Of course, much later I learned that Julia had a hand in it. Julia picked them up from school every day, and the fun they had with their old friends, Julia and Simon's children, left little time for a distraught and uninterested mother. Pam asked me if there was any chance of reconciliation. I simply let the ruthless killer that now lived in me look at her. It was never mentioned again. In fact, she made sure we were never alone after that. I obviously scared her. I got a job as an instructor on base and was home every night. The girls got the best parenting, but parental divorce always has an emotional impact no matter what you do. That's why psychologists recommend that parents always stay together unless it involves violence. Yes, life is good. 4 years and 2 months later. Percy Newmont relaxed. He hunted with a bow with his friends in the wilderness. During these activities, sometimes whole hours would pass, and he didn't think about his old problems. He looked at his friend Peter again. He and the other two worked with Percy, and they had been hanging out a lot lately. Peter caught his eye and smiled. Yeah, thought Percy, life is good. The only thing he missed with them was poker on Wednesday night. That was when Percy screwed Peter's wife. Moving across 2 states and finding a new identity had been difficult and wiped out Percy financially, but it had worked. He knew going back to Borderdale last month for his mother's funeral was risky. He felt a little foolish, cloaked in the back of the church trying to avoid any contact with his relatives. But damn it, she was his mother. Suddenly he felt a hard blow that threw Percy onto his back. He looked at the arrow sticking out of his chest just below his heart. He was confused. His 3 friends were behind him. Why had he been hit from the front? He lost consciousness, but woke up after a while. He was alone with Peter. The others had left to get help. Suddenly, the pain that had excited him in the first place came again. Why the fuck was Peter grabbing the feathers of the arrow and yanking their side? And why the hell was he smiling? The pain became too much, and Mick passed out again. 10 minutes later, he drowned in his own blood without regaining consciousness. The coroner officer looked at the body without respect. Every year I get dragged out here when some dumb bastard accidentally shoots one of his friends. Dickwad hunters. And 2 weeks after that, Pam sat in her 12th floor apartment and cried. She'd been doing this for the last 3 hours since her last boyfriend, John, had left. What's wrong with me? She thought. She reviewed her life over the last 4 years. She really thought Michael was to blame for everything. She married Dave because she knew her biological clock was ticking, and it was a way to have the children she really wanted. So when Michael came along, and she saw a new opportunity to have her children again, and a new soulmate, so she didn't hesitate. A month after Michael disappeared, it came to her attention that maybe her love for him was one-sided. Without a glance at her, he'd left for good. Even left his jacket and wallet behind. Searching for some explanation, she went to his apartment and worked 2 days after he fled, but he was nowhere to be found. What hurt her most was that he obviously didn't care how she was doing after he ran away. A big source of her depression for the first year or so was her children. She had just started a lawsuit, wanting to force Julia to get Kate and Mel back, when David came back from Iraq and stopped it. After that, when she called the girls, their conversation was indignant, as if they were accusing her of something. She saw them about every week until the bitch moved in with Dave 9 months after Pam left. Apparently, she was a journalist covering the story of David and his boys getting medals. After that, the girls didn't even want to talk to her on the phone. At the end of the day, she started parking outside the school. Even that stopped when she saw both girls run up and hug the bitch like she was their mother. They didn't even call on her birthday that year. The pain subsided somewhat when she met Pat. He was a few years older than her, but shared her dream of having a family. 8 months later, she moved in with him and they talked about marriage and children. 2 weeks later, he distressed her by telling her he had met someone else and asked her to leave. The same thing happened the following year with Randy. They hit it off immediately, and within 2 weeks were inseparable. 4 months later, they moved in to live together. 3 weeks after that, he dumped her, saying he was back together with his ex-wife. Pam then started a series of one-night stands, thinking it would boost her confidence. It had the opposite effect. She really thought she would settle down with John. Even though she knew that if she didn't have children soon, it would be too late, she forced herself to move slowly with him. It took over 12 months before she gave in to his gentle pressure and allowed him to move into her apartment. With little regret, she realized that it had been the best sex she'd had since Dave. 3 hours ago, John had met her at the door of her apartment when she got home from work. At the door, she saw his packed bags. He didn't make any excuses, just said he was leaving. He didn't make eye contact once as he picked up his bags and left. Why did he mutter "whore" as he carried the last bag out the door? She hadn't even looked at another man since she'd met him. Pam wiped her eyes and looked at the mail lying unopened on the coffee table. There was one blank envelope and 2 bills. She resisted the temptation to open the cryptic message in her excitement through John's departure. She picked up the envelope and opened it. In it was a newspaper clipping. She was confused. Why would anyone want to tell a story about some stupid hunter who died horribly after being accidentally hit by an arrow? Her face drained as she read the article to the end, which explained that the victim was officially known as Michael Brown, who lived right here in Borderdale. The paper fell out of her numb fingers. She thought of Michael. She thought of Pat and Randy. Finally, she thought of Dave. Of course she didn't think of him. Of course she did. She knew it. 4 years ago, she had almost everything. In her search for the last missing part of herself, she found herself with nothing. Stunned by the discovery, she stepped through the sliding door onto the balcony and looked out at the long but alluring view of the parking lot 12 stories below.